position in the non-com, and I thought I wouldn't be selected, and I was. And well, I agree with that many times women directly, they don't, we don't, I don't know why, but we don't apply for the position. So that's where we are.
We don't apply because we think we will not be selected, and we think we won't be selected, but if we don't apply, we will never be selected. So it's kind of a back and forth. Any comment from our panelists?
Yeah, I was just going to say, and in fact, I went through that this time with the board when I decided not to apply because it was a lost cause. And I got talked into it. And perhaps that's one of the pieces that we need to think about is we need to do more, whether you were doing it with her or somebody was doing it to me. We need to do more talking people into it and sort of say, yeah, so what if you don't get it? It's a bummer. But, you know, and we'll be supportive of you if you do, if you don't. But I think that's a bigger part. I mean, you know, I have a problem with quotas too. I'd like a quota for queer folks too. And then do we have, you know, a quota on this, a quota on that? You know, there's not enough gay people on the board. You know, and I mean, it sounds joking to say it here, but I could sit in a different room of an LGBT-oriented group, and that would be the problem.
Yeah.
And so do we deal with all problems that way? I think it'd be cool, you know, but that's the issue I have with it, so sorry. But, you know.
If you don't start somewhere, you will never get anything. LGBT or violence, you will not get it, that's okay.
But anyhow, we have to encourage people.
Sarah wants to ask.
Yeah, so 2 points. One is on the inclination not to apply. One of the things that, you know, we learned in this leadership class was that women feel a need to be perfect. So we're not going to apply till we know that we've done our homework 1,000%, we're all ready, everything organized, and men are like, okay, I'm going to apply. And they go for it. And so we do need to just go for it as well and trust ourselves a bit more. And on the quota issue, one thing that's interesting is the state of California passed a bill, those imposters for .ca, that says that at a certain point there has to be, for publicly held company, up to 50% board members need to be women. That's now in state law, and I don't know, that kind of bill may be spreading, so they are trying a quota, and it will be interesting to watch it and see how successful that is.
Yeah, we have some similar quotas in the province of Buenos Aires and in the city of Buenos Aires, also quotas for transgender.
Yes.
So, because they want to have the other ways of working in the government, so and it's quite working well. So, Rick, you want to add something to this before going to the audience?
Right. So coming to quotas, I work at the University of Maryland, and when we fill positions there, the way we do it is we say, we'd like you to definitely interview minorities and women. Now, the job description doesn't say you have to hire a woman, but before you offer the job to the finalist, you have to go through what's called Equity Council, where you have to show that you made a good faith effort to bring women in and bring minorities in, and that has been working because lo and behold, it's like, oh yeah, we never thought of this association that has a network of women and so on and so forth. So it's a process. As Vanda said, it gets better year after year. Rome wasn't built in a day, and this will take
so
some
it's
time.
not mandatory, but it's somehow promoted by the
Absolutely. You've got
something that several women say that is that they don't have time. I don't apply for that and that because I won't have time. And I think that may change with new generations at home, sharing more. My generations, it's difficult to have. I have a good husband now. I had 2 bad husbands before. I let them go because they didn't help me and they were not nice. But I think that, yes. So what I talk with my younger friends and my students is that they share a lot of activities at home and with the kids. So then maybe younger women can have more time to also do some work or having a higher position that will demand more time. So let's go to the audience, and we have a lot of speakers. John?
So I don't believe in John Moore from the DC, ISOC DC, and our board is majority women, and our two co-chairs are women. So, but it was done, I would say, and what's interesting to me about Washington, the policy making in the internet area, is there are many women. Professor Bedard also took women, and there's a lot of support among women. But also, I think the men have gotten more used to having panels that have nothing for women on. So it really is a lot of cross support, but also recognition. But the big thing is when you, and I've done it in a bunch of organizations, including a referee organization, is look forward. Don't just pick the first person there, because it's going to be a man. They always put their hand up first. Go and ask and be supportive and ask for it. You know, so let's take no for an answer.
Okay. Just try, like Priti was saying, try
exactly.
to look into the environment. Anita, you're from?
I'm from India. I wanted to say that a lot of discussions that are going on here about, as you mentioned, people being sexist in the Silicon Valley and the tremendous difference in the pay scale, the same amount of effort and work. We in India has an organization called IGF India, and a couple of days back, in fact, we received a person, a fellow, she has been selected for the fellowship, and she said, "Can you please talk to my father?" She sent me a personal message, although we don't appreciate messages of that sort, but she said that, "Can you please talk to my father?" I think he kept on asking her, "Is it really required to attend the event?" So I thought he wanted to know what the event is about, and she being from a technical background, so I explained it to him, and I also put her through the chair of ISOC Delhi Amrita, so that she can give a much clearer view. But she has backed out because father said that this is not something we should be doing, and there are not a lot of women in this field. So I tried to explain. I have grown up also to explain, but now she's backed out, and the two other girls who backed out. And they're very confident, they're good at what they're doing. So how do you handle something at this initial stage instead of really tackling issues once they start working?
So what you've touched upon is, this is outside the realm of technology. This is changing cultural norms.
Yeah.
And boy, that's a tough, nut to crack. It takes time, and you've got a chicken and egg problem there, where they're saying there are not enough women. Please don't go. But how are you going to get women if you don't come to the event, right? Yeah. So that's just going to take more education, more awareness building. I mean, I think policies and nations need to change, where they, are gender agnostic, and they bring women to the fore. And so this is a really tough problem with just being about cultural norms. So I think you just have to be assertive and do it and push us. At some point, put your foot down and say, I'm going, period.
Yeah. It's an event. I mean, it's not quite a thing. Suzanne, you want to comment?
Thank you very much.
No worries.
I have to agree with Sebastian as usual, because I don't understand why you want the board made of economic women. If we have better women, more women with better quality, I prefer to have more women on the board. Why not a full board of women? Why not? It is a problem. And the board should be made of the best people. If we want to have more women, we have to push women to apply. We have to push the good women, the women with good profile to apply, so that we will have more women on the board.
I disagree. Diversity is also important in both cases.
Well, for a while, so many years with many men, so sometimes with many women, that could be a balance as well. I have John and sure. Okay. You want to go first?
Okay. Well, that's gutsy.
Just a comment that I don't think you should put on an equal line like sex and sexual orientation. End of comment. like you shouldn't be thinking about like having a just like, well, let's say a 10% of gay people and 50% of women, for example. Like I think those are really different. Like you can't really I don't know, hide of which sex you are. Well, but like really usually you can't. Whereas sexual orientation is like that's really no one's business. I don't know. I wouldn't treat them equally in this question. That's all.
Okay. John, you want to comment?
I've been hearing this conversation about women and equity for a long time. I've been on lots of boards for the last 35 years, and so I've heard a lot of it. And one of the things that I'm dismayed about is the gender issue, because society is much larger than just men and women. It's racial minorities, there's lots of good men, there's lots of good women, there's lots of racial minorities that all add to a board. And there's the sexual orientation as well. And I think if we can get past some of that and look at the people that are applying, I think we can achieve some diversity that is representative as an ecosystem of a board. And especially if it's representing multi-stakeholders. I think that's the first thing I want to say. The second thing about is that we never get, as women, get to the solutions of actions of how to resolve the issue of the gender. Because I've been hearing it for so long. And one of the things that I think that men do very well, and I wish I could learn it, is that they forget if they have a fight with another man. You know, women bring it, like they'll continually, they remember the you know what I'm saying? Like, I've seen guys, I've seen guys like really up on each other, and then they go for a beer. A woman can't do that, or I've never met one that has. I'm sure they can. And then they go and they say, "Yeah, you knocked me in the jaw really well," and they almost admire each other for that, and we don't. We say, you know, you went against me.
And I never forget.
And
I will never
forget.
forget.
So that's the second thing I want to say. I think I'm just saying what I've observed, okay?
I agree.
Representing the whole world. I'm just representing my observation. So that's the one thing. I want to learn how to do that. But the other thing is, when you're on a board, boards were traditionally for people who had money. And so the moneyed people knew each other, so they would recommend people to be on a board. Now boards have changed, they've evolved into community. And so what has happened is women tend not to network as much as men, and so they don't have those high profiles or that network that somebody can say, that person would be really good because they've networked and they've seen them work. You're not going to recommend someone who you don't know will do that job either, because it's a reflection of you. So women need to highlight their skills, become more known, do things, and become known. And I'm not saying I say women, but I really want to say racial minorities, because I think they're equally in the same situation. So that's all I have.
I don't have a long queue. Then 1, 2, 3, 5, 4. Okay, we have like 15 minutes, and I would like to give our dear speakers 1 minute to closure. So please go ahead.
I have some question. We have an ICANN organization conducted the Gender Diversity and Participation Survey 27. We have some 5 recommendations. And do you know what is happening with the implementation of these recommendations? We know that we have now publishing on the rest of the community, but we have some recommendations, more recommendations, because nothing is happening after that survey, because last time in Marrakesh we had only 34% of female attenders. Participants in CODA 27 only participants were female, 20 was in Barcelona, Panama City 25, so these numbers are really small. So do you have do you have some information? Does anybody track this recommendation?
When was this done? When was this?
2017.
2017. ICANN conducted this survey.
I remember it, but
published a report with recommendations. Do we have some information?
I don't. I can, follow up and check, but I haven't got it.
Your question raises a really good point, which is why. Why is the attendance so low? And one of the things we often hear about is that the culture to survive it's ICANN, you have to be very tough, and that often people don't treat each other very nicely, and that's the kind of key to survival. And I think a lot of people may get fatigued, either volunteer fatigue or treating each other with respect is hugely important. So at least inside the board, we're working on an anti-harassment working group to try to fix that issue of anti-harassment and make sure that people are trained. So if they see sexual harassment, they speak up, and women support each other, men support women women support men who are being harassed. But the bigger issue is the one of how do we change to the culture to gain more respect and to understand why the participation is low. And I suspect you guys probably know more, but there are many, many factors that would weigh into that.
Who wants to go here? Johnny, you already took the floor.
My name is Abiduri.
Louder, please.
My name is Abiduri. I have a good view of women participation in internal governance. So we need to start a small initiative. For example, mapping women positions or opportunities in internal governance. Not only in ICANN, but in IGF and IGF, so to have a global view. And it's the same like Deb is doing well about data tracking, about participation by companies, stuff like this. And also to have women in board programs, for example. One woman in ICANN can coach another woman. So to follow up to be good ideas. It's not about number, but about quality of participation, contribution.
Quality coaching, and you mentioned something interesting, like a tool that could point where are the opportunities. That's interesting. Glenn, you wanted to add something?
I just wanted to, many of you may be aware of it, it's probably in the back of your memory banks, but almost 30 years ago, we had a mass shooting here at the, in Montreal. We had it at the Polytech massacre. It was by a gentleman, I shouldn't call him that, an idiot. He hated women. He went into a classroom, took all the women, put them separate, and killed them. So it was, not all Canadians are nice, contrary to what people think. So 15 women were killed and 15 were injured. So it was a tragic day in Canadian history, but it was again another person, and we're seeing it all the time, incels. We have to fight this. This is a serious issue. So it happened right here.
It's a bigger issue than just, I can't.
In Argentina, one woman is killed per day because of this violence. And I know that other countries are worse. I think Jonathan was first, or whatever.
No idea.
Hi, my name is Greg Shatton. Two observations, maybe they're questions if you think there's needs to be something more said about them. One, I think that the issue starts with developing people, mentors, mentor-protege relationships, finding people and bringing them along. Some people are lucky enough to kind of get in on the ground floor, but other times if you find people that are maybe in and they're not sure if they're going to stay in. So bringing people up and finding ways to develop talent and looking beyond, the typical classic, profile that we're trying to avoid. And that's the first thing, is to look for development, not just the end product of a person who is ready to lead. And the second is that in a way this all comes down to power. And the tradition, of, at least in much of the Western world, of power going to straight white Christian men, and kind of breaking that up and looking beyond that, and whatever vector it is, women, transgender, non-gender, binary, gay, racial minorities, religious minorities, culture. It's a diversity of indigenous peoples. It's about finding a diversity of viewpoints and breaking the cycle of people selecting people like themselves, which they feel comfortable with, but which leaves everybody else out. And so it's about breaking that kind of little power club up.
That's actually an interesting rule. Just never pick somebody like yourself.
That will get some diversity going.
Jennifer?
Yes, Jonathan Zook from the ALAC and from the Innovators Network. It occurs to me that we brought up culture and we were sort of dismissive of it because that feels like such a big problem to tackle as opposed to diversity that I can or something, but it seems like so much of it has its foundations in culture. And I know that, for example, in the United States, we're now graduating more women than men from universities, for example, and most of these students are from outside the United States. And so the transformation that's happened at a very young age with women getting more access to education, et cetera, I think will begin to have an organic effect over leadership positions throughout the economy, and not just in ICANN, because you're simply, women are passing men now academically in a lot of different circles.
There's also, though, a historical trend, you've seen it in various places, that if a profession has too many women in it, the profession starts to be denigrated. Look at teaching. When teaching was all men, it was a venerable thing to do. Now you're just a teacher. So you have to watch these trends.